Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
It's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm like, oh, it's Margaret. Yay.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah. Are you leading this morning?
I am one of the people that will be helping out with the session today. Yeah. So we got some teachers from Anoka-Hennepin.
I did remember that. Yeah. I put it, I hang on here. I forgot to take my little Post-it note off my camera. I I I did see that last week, but I haven't really looked at my email that much. You know how that goes?
I do know how that is.
Oh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
it's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for joining us today. Hmm. Hey, Sue, are you there?
I'm here, Margaret.
Okay. Just checking. I was wondering about my technology for the technology session.
I think you're good. We have well over 100 registered.
Awesome.
So
Are you doing this first slide?
what's that?
Are you doing the first slide?
Yeah, but we
Okay.
still have
Hi, Laura.
Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. This is the one of 7 sessions hosted by MCTM and MDE. And if we can advance the slide, please. The goal of these sessions really is to provide an opportunity for educators to connect and share, especially during the current situation. And we'll just have some brief introductions. My name is Sue Ingvalson, mathematics specialist at the Minnesota Department of Education. As you know, you registered for a session being provided by a team from the Anoka-Hennepin School District called I Didn't Know I Could Do That. There will be time for questions from participants at the end, but feel free to chat in questions as we go, and we can definitely monitor that also. And then we'll come back on at the end just very quickly with upcoming webinars and other opportunities. And at this time, we'll pass it over to Anoka-Hennepin. Thank you so much.
Good morning. So on this slide, you can see the bit.ly access to the slides. There's also a QR code on here if that works better for you, so that you can access the slides in that way too. And then, as you know, this presentation will be recorded. So if you want to refer back to it at another time, you can certainly do that. And Sue will give you some more information about that later. Chelsea, next slide, please. Here are our goals for today. They're pretty simple and maybe pretty vast. We have people participating in today from lots of different backgrounds, working with students of all ages, from early elementary, maybe even earlier to through high school and beyond. And what we hope for you today is that you will find some new ideas and resources that will inspire you in planning for this year. We're not claiming to know everything, and not by any means. This is just our story. The teachers you're going to be hearing from today are 3 of the many, many amazing, innovative educators that we have. They happen to catch my eye because of how I interact with people, or how I did interact with teachers at different levels this past spring. And they just made me smile. They just brought joy to their work and to their students. And in conversations with people from other districts, it seemed like, that was something that people were really struggling with. How do I keep my kids continuing to show up? Or, how do I implement math the way I know in my heart it's meant to be implemented when I don't have the children face to face? Chelsea? So here's the team. My name is Margaret Williams. We're going to be sharing stories today. I am entering my 34th year of teaching in Anoka-Hennepin. I've had lots of different roles. I've been a classroom teacher, a curriculum integrator, instructional coach, CGI facilitator, math recovery leader, and I'm currently vice president for elementary for the Minnesota Council of Teachers of Mathematics. Both of my daughters teach in Anoka-Hennepin, and I have 3 grandchildren that attend Anoka-Hennepin schools as well. I know you can't tell from my Bitmoji that I would be old enough for all of that, but my current position is elementary math specialist for Anoka-Hennepin, and I am really committed to making Anoka-Hennepin the very best district it can be for all of its students. And I think technology, learning the capabilities with the technology is one way that we can reach more students. Chelsea?
My name is Chelsea Regan. This is my 5th year teaching in Anoka-Hennepin. I currently teach 3rd grade, but I've also taught 1st grade, and I actually grew up going to Anoka-Hennepin schools, which is kind of a fun full circle moment for me. The school I work at, Monroe Elementary School, is a STEM school. So I use a ton of technology in my classroom. And what I really love about that is not only the independence that it gives students, but also just the power that it gives them, and it opens up some new doors for them.
So John, if you want to, we could continue on with the introductions a little bit later, or you can go now, John, whatever you want to do.
Oh, I'll just say a little something. I'm John Whippler. I'll be entering my 15th year of teaching, and I've worked with varying demographics, but I'm currently at Oxbow Creek Elementary in Brooklyn Park, Champlin area.
And I'm Melissa Carlson, and I am an integration technology teacher, and I'm going to be over 20 years in the district. About 11 of those I've been in this role. Before that, I taught 5th grade and 4th grade previously in Anoka-Hennepin. And I'll tell more about myself later on. But
okay. So Chelsea, do you want to advance the slide, please? Okay, so I already said a little bit about me. Can we go on to the next one? So Anoka-Hennepin is, I believe, still the largest district in the state. It sits just north of Minneapolis and St. Paul, stretches from Brooklyn Center and the southern tip of Coon Rapids to northern Andover, Blaine, and Ham Lake. So it covers a lot of geographical area, as well as has around 38,000 students. And you can see a little bit about the the number of schools that we have over here. In addition to our traditional schools, we also have a number of alternative settings. And we have about 36% students of color, and about 33% of our students are identified for free and reduced lunches. And I feel like those statistics are important too for us to think about really making sure that the education that we provide for our students is relevant to all students, not just a few. We have to be mindful of who those children are in our classrooms and in our schools. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I'm doing this summer during the COVID season is trying to visit as many Minnesota state parks as I can, making the most of my $35 park pass. And this picture was taken from the John Latch State Park, which is on the southeastern border of Minnesota. We parked the car at the bottom of a bluff, and we saw the staircase. And of course, you see a staircase, what do you have to do? You have to climb it. I've never found a staircase that I could not find the end of it. We just kept going up and up these stairs, and we just kept seeing these twists and turns. We probably climbed those stairs for about a half an hour or so, and we never did find the end. We finally, because it was starting to get dark, we just turned around and came home. One of the things I like about this picture is that it reminds me, I identify with this because it's kind of like what we're going into with this season of education. We don't know where we're going. There's probably going to be a lot of twists and turns. But it's certainly going to be interesting, and we need to be prepared for whatever might be coming our way. And even though the Minnesota governor is going to be probably giving a message about how we start school this fall, there are still going to be so many uncertainties, and how we start is probably not going to be how we finish or what our middle might look like. Next slide, please. So I stole this slide from Jess Strom's Think in Classroom presentation. And one of the things I like about this slide is that it really illustrates the difference between equality and equity. We can't just be talking about equality, but we have to make sure that we're giving everybody access. Next slide, please. I like this slide too, because I feel like that last picture is one of the things that we can do with technology. Now, what happens in the home, we can't control. When a child has access to the computer, of course, but we can certainly do our very best to ensure that when children are able to access the learning and the technology, that we can liberate teachers and students and take them wherever and think about what are their interests. And take that knowledge to make the mathematics more relevant. An example of this is on the next slide. And this was inspired by a recent conversation with Dr. Lisa Clarkson, who will be presenting on August 11th, conversation in regard to a recent TOTOS presentation, a webinar. She was traveling to DC and one of the things that she was going to do when she was there was to go to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. And she was talking about the design. Now, I've seen this museum before, but I didn't realize that the actual design of the building was relevant to the African American culture. And I'm not going to spoil the story for you, but I'm just thinking, man, if we're teaching geometry, if we're studying trapezoids, for example, rather than just, okay, well, what's the definition of a trapezoid? Let's go see some trapezoids, and why is this important to cultures and that? So this is actually a link too. So if you were to click on this afterward, it'll take you to Google Earth, which makes this more than a picture. It takes you there. So you Google the structure, the town, the country, the the geographical feature that is relevant to the math lesson that you might be studying. And then you click on the little person icon, and then that puts you in a street view mode, and you can be walking around and really examining these structures like you were there. And so that, I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to just step back now and let my colleagues take the role. So we'll start with the amazing Melissa Carlson.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and like I said before, I'm an integration technology teacher, and part of my role is staff development, or a big chunk of my role is, and I do travel to 4 different elementary schools, and I support the curriculum department in the Talls there, like Margaret. And I'm very fortunate that I get to work with amazing teachers, such as the ones in this webinar with me, and I get to be kind of a way for me to work with teachers, and I get to spread all this great stuff all around the district because I work with so many great people. So Chelsea. Part of my role also is working with the students, so I can come into a classroom and teach a tool to the students, and then the teachers hopefully will then continue on with that tool after I leave. And one of the things that really came out during this distance learning was that the teachers stepped up their game and realized all the great things they can do with technology that they had no idea they could do before. And so I think that I like this quote because I think that teachers realize that they are important and technology is important. Together can really transform their teaching. And that's what I saw firsthand every day as I work with teachers, was the aha moments of, I can do that, or I can do this in person. This can really change how I teach. Chelsea? And so while I'm collaborating with teachers, they end up collaborating with each other too. And I think they found that together that they could do so much more than they could do by themselves. And so that's what my favorite part of my job is, that I get to work with all these different people and get inspiration to bring that to all other places. So I'm pretty fortunate in that. Chelsea? So during distance learning, teachers needed to basically take their classroom in a week's time, as we all know, and change it into this online learning environment. And so in Anoka-Hennepin, we use Google Classroom, Seesaw, Google Meet, Explain Everything, the Math Learning Center apps, and so many more, because of course, as you know, teachers go out and find more and more things to help them engage their students and to bring their classroom out into their homes. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about Google Classroom and the Math Learning Center apps as we go forward. Chelsea? So one of the things that teachers used in Anoka-Hennepin was Google Classroom. And of course, they wanted to have their personality shine through while they were using Google Classroom. And Google Classroom is a place where you can post your assignments, create a community of learners. They can ask questions, interact with each other, either just the teacher or the whole entire classroom, by having conversations. And as they started working, they wanted to make it a little bit more personalized and engaging. So one of the things that teachers started to do was personalize your Google Classroom. They put on headers that maybe would explain a little bit more, like that. Click on that classwork tab, because there's stuff in there, students, that maybe aren't paying attention. And so I did put a link on here to a template of a bunch of different headers that you can use yourself to put onto your Google Classroom. Another thing, as you know, students started to miss important information, and teachers are like, how do I get them to notice when all the fonts are the same all the time? Well, using this is just one example, this fancy text generator. You could put in the text you want, and then it would create it in a different font or bold. I have 2 examples on there, a little bit harder to read in the smaller view, but it would bring more like personality to their Google Classroom instead of this flat same text all the time. The kids would notice, hey, Monday's always in this font and Tuesday's in that font, or whatever math or science or reading might be. Google Classroom is a great way to have a place for your students to go to get their information. And so teachers definitely started to personalize that. Chelsea? And one of the aspects of Google Classroom is creating assignments. And as teachers started to work with all the different tools, as you know, you can put links on assignments to different activities or different websites. Well, sometimes the kids would get lost and they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do first. There's 12 links on this assignment. Well, as we started working, we realized that you could actually click and paste the links into the directions of the assignment. And so they can say, do this, then that, and do this at the end. So they can list in order versus them clicking on a whole bunch of links on the assignment. And in this example, there is the Math Learning Center links to that, a pre-made activity for the students to do. The students would do those activities and then return their answers to the teacher on whatever platform. This happens to be Google Classroom. That could be done in Seesaw or other platforms as well. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper now into the Math Learning Center app. So go ahead, Chelsea. And so here's an example of, there's 5 right now apps on the Math Learning Center website that you can use to go and get a sharing option. Math Learning Center says there's more will be coming, but I'm going to show you a little bit how this works. So Chelsea, if you want to go ahead out into one of them. So this is the number of pieces, and as we know, kids won't probably be able to share manipulatives if they are in person, and if they're at home, you can't send home all these different manipulatives with them. So Math Learning Center has a lot of manipulatives that the students can use. So this is like base 10 kind of blocks and all that. They can create and change and do various things with these apps or manipulatives. And the teacher could ahead of time create an activity or get a whole bunch of stuff on the screen they want the kids to use. And then they would use that sharing arrow at the bottom, the sharrow, and they could go and take their answer by clicking on save image or copy the image, and they can post it back to the teacher. They also can share the link back with the teacher to their answer. So those are 3 ways the students can return an answer. A teacher could share the link to a pre-made. So if I had all my stuff out on the screen, I can click that copy link and share it with the students. Now, if I'm lucky enough to be live and in person with the students, that share code on any device, whether it be an iPad or a Chromebook or a computer, they can share that code with them, and the students click on that little key at the bottom. They would then type in the code. So if I'm live in front of students saying, hey, everybody, here's manipulatives I want you to use, they can then go to that app, type in the code, and instantly on their computer or iPad, everything I want them to have is on the screen. But reversely, as a teacher, I can take that share code on the student's device and put it on my device to share their answer. So if you don't have a way to display the student's stuff or their answer, you can use that to then display it up on the screen, which I think will be very powerful if you're in person with the students. And of course, you can do this virtually as well. All right, Chelsea. So it's a really powerful tools that they have. Of course, we know we have students with a lot of paper, and Math Learning Center and Bridges, we have like books that they use, and teachers wanted to share with them pages from those books because they want to see their answers. Not all the worksheets would probably be appropriate, but in this case, here's a story problem where maybe you picked out 3 or 4 of the really important questions you wanted to know how the students answered. You can turn it into a virtual worksheet or a digital worksheet through Google Slides. And I did put a link on here of how to do this. I made a video about it, so that's that first link on there to watch. So basically in the background is a PDF image of the worksheet. And then you leave text boxes behind and the students can type in their answer. And with Google Classroom, you can share that every kid gets a copy. That way the questions you really want to know how they answered, you can then share those with them in a digital worksheet format that would replicate what was in their student book. They also could then put the images on there too. And then I did include an example. If you click on that, you get a copy of that to kind of go to. Chelsea? And so one of the, I don't know how many of you are on all the different social media, but I know I'm on Facebook and Twitter. And one thing that's really sweeping around is virtual classrooms. And I'm on a Bitmoji crazed educator, and I'm on Seesaw, and I'm on virtual classroom, all on Facebook. And it's amazing what teachers are sharing for free. So if you're on Facebook, I definitely would look for the Bitmoji crazed educators. If you want to learn more about virtual classrooms, people are just creating them and sharing them. I did include on here a video of how to share the Google Slides in a presentation view, kind of like what we're looking at right now, and how all those links are like live for the students in a presentation view. You can share it in your Google Slide in a special way in which when the students click on it, they have the nice, pretty presentation view versus it being with all the editing around it. So this is an example of a math one I made. So Chelsea's going to go ahead to, and when you click on it, you'll get a copy of it for yourself. But here's what it would look like for the students. You can see there's 4 different Math Learning Center apps. If they click on those, it would go to the actual website. And this is a pre-made activity that was made that you want the students to answer. And there's directions at the bottom of the screen. So they would answer that, and then using those sharing arrows, they could go ahead and share back the answer with you. And so what's great about a virtual classroom is it is a one-stop shop for you to share with your students, kind of like a snapshot of the day, or a fun way to interact with students. And of course, Bitmojis are really popular to kind of give that personal touch. I know teachers, that's what we're about. We want to have that personal community building activities and community builds in our classroom. It's really hard to do that virtually. Well, Bitmoji is a great way to kind of put yourself in. And I can tell you, if you go on these social media sites, you can actually have like your live moving Bitmoji on there to really be engaging. And teachers really know that during distance learning, that engagement is really, really helpful for students. So I really hope that some of these links, I'm going to recommend looking for those virtual classrooms to really be engagement for your students. And I think that teachers found that this is a way they can clone themselves. So even if you're live and in person, you can still create these things, have them on the computer. So when you're working with small groups of students, you then could say, hey, go ahead back here to do some additional practice, or, oh, I saw you're struggling with this, go to this virtual classroom to get more information. And so it was a way to clone yourself. And some teachers would say, hey, I can do this virtually. I don't have to have every kid sit in front of me. I can really use these ways to have students learn a little bit more, or excel them, or give them more help virtually while I'm working with other students. So that's really what I saw happening during this time. So that's from me. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it over to John.
Hello, yeah, I'm John Whippler, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Google Apps, how I use those this spring, and kind of my experience with that this spring, how I engage students, and a little bit of assessment. So one thing that has kind of shaped me as an educator, even before all this distance learning stuff, is that I consider myself a high implementer, which is an important distinction because it doesn't make me an expert in anything, but I'm willing to grab whatever tools, or if I have a staff development that comes my way, I'm willing to jump into it right away, figure out what works for me, and then work on nuances and improvements from there. But I think that has served me pretty well, certainly as we look for different ways to implement technology in distance learning. The other thing that I would say is kind of important to my teaching development is I spent some of my early years at a school that eventually became a STEM magnet, similar to Chelsea's, and it was incredible, all the different resources we had and connections that we had to professionals, experts in the areas of science, math, and engineering. And I think that really resonated with students. So when I moved to a different school, I kind of mourned the loss of all those different connections. And I think I figured out pretty quickly, I'd like to think it was pretty quickly, that you don't have to be at a STEM school to make those connections with professionals in your community, especially if they're parents. So you'll see a little bit of that in what I'm going to be sharing today. So I think those two things, just being willing to implement things, and then also looking for those real world connections to engage my kiddos. Next slide, please. So starting out in right after spring break, our team decided that we were more comfortable with Google Classroom than we were with Seesaw, and it was important to us that we all use the same platform. So we jumped into Google Classroom, we uploaded videos for instruction in the classwork section, and then we also used forms for assessment. One of the trickiest things, but I think important things that we have to figure out in distance learning is how to incorporate cooperative learning. So I would try to assign groups of 2 to 3 students to different activities, even if it was bookwork. their ability to just having the option to work together on it was neat for them. But the majority of ways that I use cooperative learning would be within slides, because they could all edit together, or in a doc form. I still use Seesaw because my students were using it throughout the year, but I used it primarily for enrichment. I had some incredible high flyers that I wanted to make sure I was meeting their needs, so I would push some things out through Seesaw for them. And then we'd still do some assessment, because Seesaw has some incredible tools on there. So I'd use some assessment for the whole class on there as well. Next slide. Every video that I recorded, I used QuickTime. It's simple. You can get started really quickly, and no pun intended. And I've got a science lesson linked there that we won't watch right now, but it'll just give you an idea of, I guess, how basic it is. And I'm just basically recording myself there running a science lab. It was important to our team that we didn't give up a lot of the curriculum that was hands-on. I think that's some of the most exciting things for kiddos, especially in the science area. It's really easy to annotate on a screen recording. You could use either a Google slide, or if you still have the software from, if you use the Promethean boards, the Inspire software, but just put down any details you want there, any graphics, and then just talk over it. And you can also pull in those YouTube videos. Editing is really limited. So if you're gonna look to go to that next level and do some editing, you probably wanna put it into iMovie. But especially when you have situations where you want to reteach a kiddo with a kiddo on a specific task, it's really quick and easy. I did it again. It's really easy to record a quick little video. So I also did movie recordings, but that's just if you want to get more of a face-to-face interaction with your students. Next slide. So I did quite a bit of work with iMovie. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I have a science lesson here where we won't watch it right now, but just I used it to add an introduction to a QuickTime video. So it probably took me less than a minute to add that to it, but I think kids appreciate the production value. They enjoy laughing. Sometimes there's some self-deprecating humor in my classroom, and I think they appreciate that too. It's potentially more engaging. I think, like I said, kids like having a little bit more production value. You can talk over it. You can add music. It's certainly easier to edit. Those of you who make mistakes when recording yourselves, it's a nice place to cut those pieces out. And I think the more we're able to shorten those videos and remove all that dead time, the better off we are. So you might have different tools in your district, but we had Google Drive, so I was able to compress the videos there and share it widely without issue. Perfection is an unrealistic goal. You could spend hours and hours and hours on videos. I would suggest keeping it to a minimum. Most of this, with the exception of the math video I'm about to share, most videos take me less than 15, 20 minutes. But the last unit of math this year, I've talked about how I didn't want to give up anything. I didn't want to give up any of the exciting curriculum. So this is towards the end of the year. It was probably mid-May. We have an engineering unit in our Bridges math curriculum, and we didn't want to lose that hands-on piece. So I made an introductory video just to kind of get kids excited, so we didn't see that end of the year, May, June slide. And we just looked for different ways to still have those hands-on pieces and also get them excited. So Chelsea, if you wouldn't mind, I think I have a timestamp there. We'll just watch a little bit of it here, and you're welcome to check out the full video later. So, Chelsea, before you start it, the engineering unit is about designing, dreaming up, and then creating your own, in this case, to scale playground for the school. So the kids were pretty excited about it. Thanks. Chelsea, I'm not hearing the audio. Does everyone else have the audio on the video?
No.
Sorry, I probably have to unmute myself, huh? All right. Did you hear that?
But since
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
we're stuck at home, your math and science teachers want to give you a different, arguably more creative way to interact with our playground. What if you could design a dream playground for Oxbow Creek Elementary? What would it look like? What would you want in it? Who's going to be using it? How much will it cost? We're going to work with you on all of the research, safety, different types of equipment. We'll use Google Draw to do our design and layout. But as you know, your teachers are not industry professionals. But this guy is. Meet Andrew Prutwill, the owner and lead designer of Ultimate Playgrounds. He is going to give us insight into all the stages of developing a beautiful, fun, and inclusive playground for Oxbow Panthers. Not only has Mr. Prutwill operated this company since 2012, but he's also a certified playground safety inspector. We're going to harness all of our skills, just like this little guy, in the areas of science and engineering, math, and dogs walking on a treadmill? Oh, sorry, that's from my personal collection. Where was I again? Oh yeah, that's right. We're going to channel all of our skills to make informed choices about costs, optimizing space, and equipment selection. When we use Google Draw to design our playground, there's going to be some pre-made icons for some items that we assume you're going to want to use. But you can also create some items of your own if you'd like. For example, let's say you want to make a spiderweb jungle gym. You might make something a little bit like this. So you can use what we've created, or you can be entirely original. You'll have the opportunity to use Google Sheets to track the budget and itemize your spending. You'll never have unlimited resources in the real world, so you won't on this project either. Without a doubt, time is going to be tight, so we'll need to make the most of every day. If time allows, you might have a chance to create a three-dimensional model like students did last year.
So that video took a little bit longer, pulling in some different pieces, and at the end, they got some kids dancing on the playground. So it took a little bit longer to get those kids to pull those pieces in. But for the most part, all of that editing is really intuitive, and I would encourage you, if you haven't checked out iMovie yet, to just try something. There are a lot of different tools you can figure out on your own, and then you can kind of dig into tutorials or reach out to someone about how to do some things that maybe you don't understand yet. So I have another video. I think I'm getting a little long-winded here, so I'll just talk about it, and then you're welcome to check it out later. So I used the stop motion app to do a stop motion video with little Lego guys, and then I put it into iMovie to edit. You're welcome to check out the future Mr. Whippler video later, but the premise was we were about 2 weeks into distance learning, and I think kids were kind of, I guess, stuck. We kind of hit a wall with the new normal. I don't think they were planning on doing it the rest of May, or excuse me, the rest of spring, and so I came up with a fictitious scenario that future Mr. Whippler was coming back to them via video from a post-apocalyptic world controlled by, you guessed it, robots. And it was their job to solve math problems to help future Mr. Whippler avoid a post-apocalyptic world and create a virus to stop the robots. So I know, it's super far-fetched, kind of weird, but got the kids going, motivated, and it was a lot of fun. This particular video that I made took about 12 minutes. So just keep that in mind, that it's not unattainable to make it happen. So Next slide. So these are a couple work samples from one of my students. So we were kind of limited to two-dimensional design. There are web applications to do three-dimensional design. I wasn't ready to tackle that this last spring, but you can see the accompanying budget. We didn't do anything with formulas. Obviously, you could do a formula in the quantity column to multiply, and I think that would be a neat tool to give the kiddos and teach them how to do, but that wasn't something we did. Next slide. And then just talking about assessments. So like I said, we used Google Forms to create assessments. We got pretty good at it, where it was taking us less than 5 minutes to create these assessments. You have the potential for instant student feedback if you mark which answer is going to be correct in a multiple choice situation. But we ran into a little bit of trouble with short answers. So if you want to hit that next slide. With short answer, you want to make sure that you think of every single correct answer kiddos can write down. So it's kind of a little bit of trial and error on your part, and then also coaching the students not to get too creative with their answers. In this case, you can see the correct answers. I listed as many as I could think of there, but if a student wrote 1/2 with an exclamation point, it's going to show up as wrong. So we want to be really careful with how we use these assessments. You don't want to give students false positives or false negatives. That can be super confusing, and all we want to do is, in my case anyways, all I wanted to do is have quick, simple data on these kiddos who are doing a lot of independent work. One bullet I skipped on the last one, if you wouldn't mind going back, Chelsea, was that when students would have incorrect answers on the forms, I had a pre-made second form that would go out to them with a tutorial. So there'd be some reteaching there, just a quick, excuse me, a quick tutorial if I wasn't able to do face-to-face work with them. So that's kind of how we use assessments in Google Forms. It's Chelsea's turn.
All right. I kind of introduced myself towards the beginning, but my name is Chelsea Regan, and I teach 3rd grade at Monroe Elementary School, which is in Brooklyn Park. And I am a big fan of technology in the classroom, and then during distance learning, it just, a lot of doors were open for me, which resulted in a lot of doors being open for my students. Something that John said that really stood out to me yesterday when we were talking, and he said again today, was that he doesn't want to give up curriculum, especially exciting curriculum. And I think distance learning was an easy time to do that. So staying motivated to not do that was kind of my team's goal. And the tools I'm going to talk about today really helped us to stay true to the curriculum. So during distance learning, we used Google Sites as a school. So each grade level had their own site, and then within the sites, they watched an instructional video, which was made with Explain Everything. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Explain Everything is and what it does. Then students were provided an optional practice activity, and that was something we weren't checking. So it was something that they could share with their families or share with someone at home or just do independently. And then there was a seesaw activity. And kind of opposite of John, we started with Google Classroom and Seesaw, and we opted to go the Seesaw route, just keeping it more consistent for our kids. But we are huge fans of Google Classroom. So in Seesaw, we found that it was really helpful for a quick formative assessment of whatever skill we were teaching in that day's video. And we also liked that parents were seeing what was happening, and we could communicate easily with families. So the two things I'm going to talk mostly about today are Seesaw and Explain Everything. I'm willing to guess a lot of you have heard of Seesaw or have used Seesaw yourself. If you haven't, it's a great way to communicate with families. It essentially creates an online portfolio of student work. They complete it on the computer and then they submit it to you. And as the teacher, you have an opportunity to say, yes, I'm gonna approve this, or I wanna send it back and something needs to be fixed. And that was a tool we used a lot when providing feedback. And then Explain Everything, I like to think of it as the Swiss Army knife of technology tools, because it really does so many of the things you want a technology tool to do. When we were in person, I used it as my slides for the day. I could upload Google Slides to Explain Everything. You can record videos using it. So with that, you would be recording the slideshow and annotating on top of it while you talk. And it has an infinite canvas, so you can zoom out as far as you want. You can zoom in as close as you want. There's just a lot of opportunities to be really creative. And you'll see a couple of examples coming up. So two of my favorite features about Explain Everything. One, the fact that you can manipulate and move images or objects. We used that a lot in place of things like counters or math manipulatives when we were making these videos. And then the second feature is the ability to annotate. So I'm going to show you two clips. They're each about 30 seconds long, and it just kind of models both of those features. If you're interested in seeing kind of this lesson in its entirety, and there's a few other cool things done with Explain Everything, the full video is linked in here for you as well. But here is clip number 1. Maybe you filled it up like this. Or maybe you filled it up like this. Pause the video and see if you can find 2 other ways that you could fill up your egg carton halfway. So in that video, students were following along with a whiteboard that we sent home with them. And then here is our second clip. What we noticed is that all of our halves showed 6 out of 12 eggs. Therefore, 6/12, 6 out of 12 equals 1/2. So if we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, these 2 fractions are the same. All right. So there's just a couple of examples of how that tool can really be used super flexibly, and it's super quick to make as well. Usually our strategy was to create kind of a template in Google Slides and upload it to Explain Everything, and then there's just a record button and you're talking and writing as you record. So it usually takes however long your video is to make. At the end of each video, we gave students directions on how to go ahead and take the next step and complete that exit slip in Seesaw. So I just took a screen grab here of what students would see as I'm explaining the directions to them. We found that a lot of students were struggling to complete these Seesaw activities when all they had was the visual or written instructions. So we started explaining to them what to do just like we would in person. And then they would see something like this in Seesaw. And then the last thing I want to talk about is actually in Seesaw, how we gave feedback. So this is an example activity that a student of mine completed after watching the video that you just saw some clips from. And the thing with Seesaw is kind of the obvious choices Seesaw gives you for feedback is either a written comment or an audio comment. But another thing we found really helpful was there are 3 little dots, and if you click that and click edit item, you have the ability to voice record and annotate at the same time. So you can actually go in and edit the student's item with your voice and kind of give them a little mini lesson to help them, correct whatever misconception they had. And then you can click that send back button so they get notified that they have something to do, and then they can turn it into you again. So you can see here, I chose to use the comment for feedback. And then that second comment down there is after she had adjusted her work and then resubmitted it in to me. So that is all I have. I think I'm going to turn it over to either Margaret or Melissa for this next slide.
Melissa, do you want to start?
Yeah, I just put some resources of places. I really like some of these websites. The Shake Up Learning website and Class Tips are some people I've seen at Ties before, and I follow different blogs from them. And just some hashtags for our school district and some people on Twitter that we really like. There's a guy, that first one, that Kay Sasner, he's an amazing Seesaw guy. And so these are some resources for you if you want to go and dive deeper in. The Google for Education is just a Google's website. I really love this podcast, the Google Teacher Podcast. There's like the Google Teacher Tribe, and it's this Casey Bell, and she works with another guy who wrote Ditch That Textbook, and they both have a podcast, and it's just amazing what they share. I think a 15-20 minute podcast you can listen to and get some amazing ideas to use right away. So Margaret.
Okay. Chelsea, could you go to the math tasks and resources? This was a recent find on Twitter. And you will have a link to this then as well. You're probably familiar with a lot of these websites on the top. It's kind of like a one-stop shop. It's like all your favorite things, or most of your favorite things, are right here, plus probably a lot of new things to check out and see how that might get you going in your classroom this year. So thinking about that potential of distance learning or the hybrid model, and having the access to manipulatives, like Melissa was saying, how kids use tools is going to be different this year. We have to think about safety and access and all that. A Math Learning Center has a number of great web-based or apps that you can use for virtual manipulatives, but thinking about some of the experiences that our children have with the real deal, there are some additional things on here, like the Unifix Cube. And in this case, you click on the actual icon or the picture, and that will take you to that website, and you can see how the children can take Unifix cubes and actually snap them together and unsnap them. If that's the tool that they would be using in the classroom, it's kind of nice, especially for the younger ones, to replicate as much as possible what they would have in the classroom. As well as, let's see, what was another one that I was so excited about? I've got it written down here. Oh, the color tiles, the 1-inch tiles. Those are a big deal in the Bridges curriculum, as well as in a lot of secondary classrooms too. So you've got your 4 colors, and you can construct rectangles of different sizes. It's a great way to help children understand a lot of great math concepts. And then Chelsea, if you could go back. Another manipulative that I was excited about for elementary, especially younger elementary, is the 2-color counters. You don't have to open that one, but you can see and you can imagine how that one is going to work. So there's all these different tools here, as well as links to virtual spinners and dice and timers and so on. Now you might be thinking, well, that's great for elementary. Well, we just adopted CPM in Anoka-Hennepin. I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a great connection to the Bridges program that we have K-5. And one of the things that I know about CPM is that it has a large emphasis on visualizing mathematics. And I've been working with secondary math teaching and learning specialists about what manipulatives we can give up in elementary so that they can use them with the middle and high school students. And so I'm just thinking, you know, if you're an 11th grade math teacher, there's probably something here for you too. So we were just really, really excited to have found this resource on Twitter, which is a great place to get ideas. Okay, well, gosh, we're running out of time here. I think that, oh, the CPM ebook has online manipulatives. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know, but maybe, you know, so here's more stuff for you. So how do we do questions, Sue?
There was a question in the comments from Elizabeth about compressing videos in Google Drive.
Okay.
I can speak to it. Otherwise, Chelsea could maybe show it as the person running things here. But really, if you just go into My Drive and hit the I don't know what you could call it, the down arrow within there, you can upload files. The other thing is I think I pretty much just drag my videos from my from my desktop into the drive, and it'll compress them, and it'll take a little while, especially if it's a longer video. You don't want to plan on sharing a video with your kids 10 minutes after you make it, just because it's going to take a little while to be viewable for them.
Oh, I see somebody already answered that question about CPM. Well, I did too. Better to over answer than under answer. No, that's not necessarily true. Any other questions?
If you'd like to unmute yourself and just ask a question directly, you're welcome to do that. Sarah, do you want to say more about Desmos and CPM?
I could speak to the subscription for Explain Everything really quickly. We did purchase a subscription as a district. There is a free version of it as well that you get, so only a couple, I think it's like 4 active boards, but yes, our district did purchase for us the online version, so.
I have a question about Explain Everything. Do you think that because right now our district isn't necessarily supporting that in terms of a paid application, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about advocating for that? I mean, is that something, is that like, would that be really important to try to get the funds for it?
Melissa, I think you're a little more familiar with the differences between the free and the paid version.
I think if you can have it paid for, there's a lot of benefits to that because you get online storage, you can have multiple multiple boards at one time. So if it is possible, I think it gives us, our teachers, we had Promethean boards and we did away with them. So now it is definitely a way for them to utilize the tools they are missing in that, using the Promethean board on their iPad or on their computer. So if you're able to purchase it for the benefits, but if you just want to get started with some people because that's what we did. We had used a free version and got to the point where it just wasn't going to keep going. In a very, I don't know, I guess you would say it wasn't very feasible to keep going when you couldn't store a lot on there. And it was almost a no-brainer with what you can get. And the iPad version is much better than the online version. So if you're going to utilize it, definitely the iPad has so many more pieces to it that you can't do on the online version as well. So I do recommend that if you can purchase it. We did purchase at one time the actual app itself, but it's not nearly the same as the subscription service.
And it's something that's just as useful in person. Like our district purchased it before distance learning was even a thought. And we loved being able to present using it and have students come up to the iPad and manipulate things too.
Yeah, and if you're gonna want to use it for video for distance learning, and you don't get as much time, like I think that Jessica said, about a minute. In person, it wouldn't matter because you wouldn't be recording yourself necessarily. But what's great about if you were in person, you could record your lesson and then upload that for kids that were gone or needed to view it again. So there are a lot of benefits to be able to record it while you're live and in person too. So if possible, the paid version definitely is helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, did you want to move on to your next slide, Margaret?
Yeah, I think so, Sue. All right, so as we wrap up today, we hope that you were able to find some ideas, some suggestions that will inspire, engage, and liberate your math instruction for this year. There will be contact information for us on the final slide. So if anybody would like to reach out to us with more questions or ideas, because we like to learn and grow every day, just like you all. And so anyway, we'd just like you to think about a takeaway from this morning that you think will be useful for you in whatever modality you're teaching in this fall. And take it away, Sue.
Okay. Well, big thank you to the Anoka-Hennepin team being willing to give up your time and prepare for this presentation and share all of your expertise and dedication. Thank you so much. I hope you hear lots of applause. And upcoming sessions, this is the third of the 7, and hopefully you've all received information to register for the next 2. And they'll actually come out as live links to you in a follow-up email to this webinar that will have your clock hours certificate, as well as just a really quick eval. So if you want direct links, those will be sent to you directly. Otherwise, you can go to MCTM at any time, watch for the at MCTM_min, the MDE calendar, or you can also email Sharon Burrell, the Executive Director at mctm@mctm.org. These videos, except for the equity conversation, are being recorded, and we will also send those links out to you as soon as we have them available, and they will also be posted at MDE as well as at MCTM. Next slide, please. I just want to make sure you're aware the presidential awards are still going on. The nominations aren't open quite yet for this year. But we have Minnesota elementary teachers currently putting in their applications because that deadline was extended given the circumstances last spring. But for secondary teachers, this year, self-award, or you can self-nominate. It is a $10,000 reward for the awardee. And we encourage you to go ahead and watch for that to open at the Presidential Award site. And next slide, please. And again, thank you so much to the Anoka team. And all of the slides are posted and you can have access to them. And like I said, we'll also get you the recordings. Big applause to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, it was fun. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, you too. Thanks so much.